Often, with traditional publishing, there's a decision for each book. What will the print run be? How many will we print? And a lot of other consequences, a decision like that has other consequences for other parts of the publishing process. And so with us, given the technology of print on demand, which has come a very long way since its very early days, and it's a perfectly good way to produce a book, we will be doing that. So we do not do print runs, we do print on demand, and we will publish digitally as well, ebooks, audiobooks, but the physical book will be printed as needed. So that's one big, big difference.
I think also, as Henriette sort of hinted at, it's important to see the question both ways. It's not just what are we not able to do, but what are we able to do? What are the things we get to do that bigger publishers can't do? And so, for example, one of the things that Henriette and I are doing from the get-go for even how we take submissions. So we take submissions from agented and unagented writers. But we know from personal experience and from the experience of probably everybody who's listening to us here, anybody who's tried to get their work out there, how hard it is, how frustrating it is, how long it takes, how you get ghosted, you don't hear back. I mean, it's really demoralizing. So right there, we designed a system for taking in submissions where we have a system to guarantee a response within a week to every single query that we get. And the way we do it is not because we have 10 extra hours a day that nobody else has, but we have a system to control how many queries we can accept in a given week, and we change that week by week based on what we know our lives are like. I mean, we're all humans, we have other things going on, and if someone's traveling, someone's kid is sick, whatever it is, then we need to take in fewer. But whatever number we say we're going to look at, we will look at, and we guarantee a response within a week. And we've gotten some really, really nice feedback from that, even from people who we've ultimately turned down, or whose work we've turned down. And so that's just one example. I mean, there's a lot of others, but it's one example of how by redesigning the system, we're getting to do things that we think are really cool.
I mean, the big sort of elephant in the room is distribution. I mean, large publishers have established distribution through large channels, and that works both to the author's advantage because your relatives can find your book at Barnes and Noble, but it also has a disadvantage too because the books can all come back and be returned, which is the great Achilles heel of traditional publishing. So I think being able to target in the way you all are doing through unusual venues, not just bookstores, and just control your distribution and make sure that it gets to places where people really care about it versus just 20 titles and 19 come back is really important, because that's a dismaying part of the business, is just seeing the waste and the sort of the shipping and receiving that ends up creating a big river of books that don't necessarily find their way into the hands of readers.
Right.
And that
the sort of false belief, and we all as authors who are published have this notion of, my book will be everywhere. And it's not, because even if you're with Penguin Random House, as I was with my first book, even if the distribution team is really behind you, or the sales team, they physically can't. Not every bookstore is going to say, yes, we'll give this much shelf space to that one title out of the thousands and thousands that are published every year in the United States. So it's this sort of fallacy that people feel that to go with the traditional publisher who has traditional distribution means that they'll be able to walk into any store and see their book on the shelf. And it's a very small percentage of books that are on the shelf of a very small percentage of bookstores with traditional publishing, with traditional distribution. So why, bet the farm on that model when...
No, it's not a bigger is better thing. In fact, most people who publish with us actually remarked that the experience was better, even though they knew they weren't going to make any money at it. But just to have the chance to inspire generosity, but also to work directly with editors and to know we only do a couple books a year, it's very different. And to your point, it's like the one bit of advice I always give every writer is, downsize your delusions. It's like your book will not be in every store. Things that you think will happen probably won't happen. Things that you didn't think would happen may happen, and it's just part of the surprise of the whole thing. And you have to not go into it thinking that it's going to be the dream of your first novel. It's just really getting that first novel out is dream enough right there.
So Stona, can you expound on that? Because you're a 501c3 and your model is entirely different than Galiot. So at Concord Free Press, 2,000 books are printed,
Right.
correct?
Yeah.
And then so why would a person want, if you're saying they don't get paid because it's free, so what's the advantage to someone going in that direction?
Well, the writers we tend to attract are writers that have several books out, have a career that's mid-career writers in general, or people that have sort of another angle on what they do. We published a book by Jenny Slate, who's a comedian, so she had something else going on, and by Gregory Maguire, who wrote Wicked. So money was not front and center for him. He'd written a book that was unusual and wanted to get it out. It wasn't fitting in his normal category. And so there's that advantage. We can put out books that, publishers turned aside because they were different from the genre that the writers used to. Also, at a certain point, writers want to get a book out by any means necessary. Our writers retain control over all the rights beyond this one issue of 2,000 copies. So it gets some attention. We get them reviewed. These are books that get widely distributed. They go through independent bookstores. We also take requests over the internet from anybody, anywhere in the world, and we ship the book for free to anywhere in the world. So if someone wants one of our books, it gets to them, and then they pass it on, and it goes through a whole gift economy sort of cycle. So why would a writer want to do that? Well, A, they're generous. B, they know that they're not relying on this to pay for the lentils. They're doing it because they want to, or the lentil, as I say around my house, like the lentil, where you split it 4 ways with your family. But you want to do something else and do something intriguing and be generous. And in the end, a lot of our books go on to commercial editions because they get reviewed, and that works, or onto film rights and whatever, foreign rights. That's it's all in the author's purvey or control, and that's it works. No one's been unhappy with the deal they made with us, which was a 1-page document we call the non-tract, and we keep it simple.
Well, if there's not much money changing hands and such, it gets much simpler.
Very little money changes hands.
Yeah.
Okay, so Anjali, can you maybe tell us more about your model then and how it differs?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to integrate. I see a question about how Galiot generates interest in a particular book, so I'll pull that into the answer. So we have it's an interesting discussion because we came at it from a very different angle, and we decided we wanted to prove that literature and the arts and commerce and business can actually go together, but in order to do that, we have to change some of the ways that traditional publishing is done. So we are working on partnerships so we want to direct as many sales as possible to come through our website, because in that way we don't give up the 40 or 50% discount that retailers require, which means we get the full amount of whatever we charge for the book. We can therefore pay the authors more, a higher percentage. And but how do we do that? How do we attract attention to our website? So and to our book. So one of the ways is, and we have to say our first books are coming out next fall, so this is all in the works. But one of the ways is to think about, well, where can we sell books that's not bookstores? Where can we sell books where they're not competing with a gazillion other books, and we don't have to give up the 50% discount, and we don't have shelf space that in 3 months is going to have to be used by the next books. And so we thought about places where people have some downtime, maybe some leisure time, and that includes hotels, it includes cafes, it might include some other sort of artsy spaces. Once you start thinking about it that way, there's actually a lot of places where we can find our readers and make them encounter our books, sometimes in unexpected ways, and help people remember or rediscover the joy of I do have time to read. Look, this book suddenly, here I am. And so how does that happen? We're going to have, right now it's like a typewriter, but an object, a physical object that doesn't rely on electricity, that won't break down, that won't, that really low maintenance. And you tap it with your phone, and it's equipped with a near field communication chip, NFC chip, just like when you pay for something wherever you go now. And you tap it with your phone, and you get right away on your phone the page with our books. You can download, you can read a bit, you can download, pay for an ebook and get the whole thing, or you can order it for print on demand. It'll be shipped wherever you want to ship it. And in the meantime, you can get the first few chapters on your device right away. So the idea is we can be in bookstores, but we can also be in not bookstores and create a little buzz around this discovery of something unexpected as you kind of go about your life.
And Henriette, can you tell me what kind of books you're looking for and about approximately how many you're going to publish each quarter or semester or whatever?
Yeah, so we'll publish 3 books in the fall, each fall, and 3 in the spring. So a total of 6 each year. We could increase that number if we are able to hire another editor, but at the moment, like, that's the load that we feel we can take on between the two of us. And we're looking for books that, the way we think of it is that they sort of exist at the intersection of currents and cultures. So it might be a book that, like one of our first publications, is, on the face of it, it's a crime novel, but it's also interwoven with Greek mythology and surrealism and art, which, like, in a very high level kind of way, without burdening the reader with all this weighty material. And so it's something that exists between genres or overlaps genres, and that's the kind of book that we're interested in finding. And we really are excited that we think the ones that we have coming out for the fall as our first set are like that. The ones that, it was an interesting experiment or experience when we wanted to announce the publication of the books, or not the publication, the acquisition of the books. We went to the place where you do this, which is Publishers Marketplace, and I filled out the form, and there's a place on the form that asks what genre, and one was mystery crime, among the other things, another literary, different categories. And I was like, well, it's both, but you can only pick one. And that's, if you're looking for multiple categories in a situation where you can only pick one, that's our book.
It's super frustrating. And I
That's
lived
a Galiot
this.
Press book.
I lived this my entire life because my father's Indian, my mother's Jewish American, white, and I grew up in France. And I grew up checking the other box. And even to this day, there are places where I have to choose Asian or Caucasian or white or whatever the term is used. And I'm like, in this day and age, like, why do things have to fall in a single category and put in a box, and then people make assumptions and just no. And so, those are the types of books that are doing something different, that are bridging, that are creating something new, that are just interesting and leading to discussion and to people wanting to know more. And I think, Henriette too, as being Greek and American, like this, we're both multilingual, I've had a very multidisciplinary career. I was an urban planner. I started a dance nonprofit. I ran that. So we both love this notion of multiplicity and in-betweens and overlaps, and that's where we like to exist.
We think of
This
it
is
too a little bit,
fantastic.
though this isn't the imagery that we use anywhere on our site, but we think about it in terms of sort of what happens when a monsoon wind enables trade in, say, the Indian Ocean, and you end up with cultures along the rim of that along the coastline of that ocean that borrow from each other, and that have, sometimes they're not pleasant borrowings, right? But communication and cross currents that happen from that sort of interchange. And that's the kind of thing that we are thinking about.
Well, I do want to hear from all of you, and Stona, we'll go to you next. What happens once someone has submitted and you have chosen their book? What happens next? And then we'll come back to you, ladies.
Okay, for us, it's simple. We send a one-page contract. We begin publishing the book by editing, designing, the usual stuff people do. But because we we don't do first novelists. We don't do people who need a lot of attention because we don't have that sort of bandwidth. So we do what we can to make the book the best version of itself as we can. But the people we deal with are journeyman writers generally that have been through a lot of, they write clean. And so we put a lot of attention into design because if you're going to give away a book for free, it has to look really good. Otherwise, people say, that's why it's free. It looks terrible. And there are a lot of terrible self-published books and just terrible looking books, even from commercial publishers. So we sweat it. We've got a very strong brand. All of our books look like they came from the same place. They're really, design goes into it because it shows attention and detail. And a lot of our volunteers, and we're all volunteers, are former participants at some level in the punk rock community. And the lesson you learn when you're in a band is like, you got to do it all yourself. And you have to care a lot about everything and care not at all about some things. So if something looks too hard, like, oh, we really have to ramp up our social, we need to really put a lot of time into it, we just don't do it because it doesn't matter. We're not selling anything. So trying to get rid of all the scaffolding of publishing and modern capitalism are really, it's part of our work is to prune away the things that can take up an enormous amount of time. And all we want to do is inspire generosity. So our work with the author is to figure out, okay, let's see if you want to do some readings, how do we get attention for this book? How do we get it reviewed in the Times? How do we get it reviewed in genre online outlets? And just do our best to customize a plan based on each book and each author. And it's a collaboration, just like I'm sure it is for you guys. It's just, you sit down with the author and figure it out together. It's not like the marketing team shows up and tells you what's going to happen. So that's what happens. And then the book comes out, and it's because, there's no weight on it. We try not to have it's not like traditional publishing where there's like a lay down day where the book shows up and it's ceremoniously displayed at every store. It's just exciting to see it come out, and our books do get widely reviewed and they get a lot of attention from readers. So that's the sort of reward that a lot of our writers find the most sort of the reason why they participate with us. And it goes on from there. That I would say in terms of marketing, we're like the long tail of publishing. We keep the books out there as years sometimes until we run out, and that lets us continue to answer requests. In fact, if you look at our website and see a book that you like, just tell us, write us at concordfreepress.com, and we'll send it to you. It's that easy.
That's
and people
amazing.
always say, "What's the catch?" And writers say this too. What's the catch? I said, "Well, we're not going to. It's really clear we're not going to take the rights away from you. We're going to do the best we can with your book." And for readers, all we're asking is if you can get it together to be generous, please do, and pass your book on. And overwhelmingly, they've done that. So to answer your question, that's the process, but it's really, really stripped down.
That's awesome. So Henriette, tell us about Galiot.
Well, maybe I'll answer since we've spoken about it a bunch, maybe I'll answer the question that's in the Q&A
how are the
right
books
now.
designed?
Oh, about how Galiot. Oh, sorry. Wait.
Yeah, no,
You
like,
should
so
answer
what
the question,
happens,
because
what
you're-
happens once a book is with us?
All right. So yeah. So once a book is with us, we treat every book like a project management project.
Yeah.
And so and we have for each other. Right now, we are the project managers of each other's books that we acquired. And so I have two, and Anjali has one. She's the project manager for my two, and vice versa. We like to operate in a mode of concurrency. So we start everything at the same time. More or less. Editing has already begun, but in the next, with the first two or three of our books, but really soon, what is it, about 6 months before pub date? No, more than that. No, 6 months before pub date.
Yeah.
We have a kickoff meeting with the cover design studio, the marketing company people.
Yeah, we have a PR, we have a
Sorry,
PR,
PR,
marketing,
not
yeah.
marketing, PR. With us and with the author, and if the author is agented, the agent would be at that conversation as well. And so everyone is on the same page. and everyone knows what everyone else is doing. We track it with a Gantt chart to see where we are in the whole process and make sure that we're moving all the pieces along. It is possible to turn a book around from acquisition to publication in a year if you start everything at once. I mean, traditional
And especially if
publishing,
you're not doing print runs,
and
right?
if you're not doing print runs.
Like getting it ready to be able to be printed on demand.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's our process. And we're
I
getting
mean,
ready.
we also are trying to really support our authors in some way, in ways that some other publishers don't. I'm not saying none of them do, but for example, we want to offer them some coaching on some things like how to give a good reading, how to approach a venue for an event, that kind of thing. And also for each of our authors to have a page on our site where they have not only their info bio and their book, but also if there's other things related to their book that they want to even sell through our site, because we'll have an e-commerce site. So a lecture on, whatever topic that's related to the book, or, a downloadable audio walking tour of the city that it's set in, or, whatever it is, we call these sort of ancillary materials, and we will put them up on the site and people can purchase them and we take a little commission, but it's basically to have multiple streams of revenue for our authors. And so that's sort of one example. And like Stona, our books, because they're print on demand, you'll be able to order it, a book many years from now, and there won't be an issue of it being out of print. So we will always continue to have our sort of a long tail, like Stona mentioned.
And something that I remember in our conversation that's different is you all pay royalties. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, we pay royalties that are 3 times industry standard. Our advance is very small, but indeed it is an advance. We don't charge you, the author, anything to work.
We pay
with
$1,000 to all authors.
Yeah,
Same
and
thing to
it's
everyone.
the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's no feeling from one author wondering if they're being treated differently from the other authors. Everything is transparent. Everybody knows what everybody else is doing. It's the same. But the reward for us is, because the advance is small, there is a really good chance that you're going to earn out your advance and you'll be getting royalties, and you'll be getting those at a much higher rate than you would at another publisher.
Yeah, so our rate is 30% of net profit goes to the author, and 50 for print and 50% for ebooks.
That's great. And it goes without saying that anybody who's going to bring a book to you, it is already going to have been, I mean, we have writers on here at all different stages in their writing careers. So this book is going to have been written and rewritten again. They've going to possibly taken it to a consultant. They've done their homework ahead of time. And yet then an editor still comes in and does the final edit with you then, in both situations for Stona as well. Does an editor come in, or does it go as the author has it?
No, everything has, I mean, it's funny. A lot of times working directly with the author, you can ask questions that make them revisit some stuff. You can decide, I'm not sure about this part. It's like you just have to be an editor. And since everybody that edits is also a writer, we come to it. And this can be a plus or a minus, but you generally try to assign books to an editor that gets what the author's up to. And it's a collaborative process. I mean, I think when our books go on to commercial editions, a lot of times they don't get edited again at all. I mean, because they're ready to go. But to your point, Tish, it's the advice to writers is, get your work completely together. Don't ever send anything out that you think is halfway, and whatever you need to do to get it in really good shape, no matter if you're submitting it to the Concord Free Press or Galiot or a major publisher, it's got to be really good to stand out at this point. And it has to be from the first page, and it's a challenge, I mean, because some books are quiet, they can still be quiet and beautiful and impactful. It doesn't mean you have to have, a helicopter accident on your first page, over the top.
Speaking of first page, we run a free series. We've done it twice now, where you can submit your first page of your work, just one page, or the query letter. And one of us, Henriette or I, will run the session along with the other 8 people. So we take 9 people at a time
Good.
over 3 weeks, and we workshop 3 first pages or 3 query letters each session. And we do that for free because,
That is good.
because
Yeah,
it
people
helps
should know.
everybody. We can
People
all
should
learn
have this
from it.
information.
And what?
Smart.
No, I'm just saying people should have this information.
People should have this, and they also should have. We run a class that's also free called Publishing Info. Every writer should know, and most people don't talk about. And that it lists a lot of the things that Stona was mentioning about downsizing your delusions, like the things that it can sound a little harsh, but I think people come out of it really feeling like, okay, well now I know these things. I mean, most people, I didn't know before I had a book out that bookstores take a 50% discount. That if your book says $20 on the back, the bookstore has paid 10. What happens to the other 10? Whoo, they don't exist. So that's really important to know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, now that you've mentioned that, Henriette, you also have workshops and other things that you're doing. You have the Corona? Kruna. I apologize. So that's in Greece, and you also have Wellfleet, which are other workshops and classes that you're doing. Can you tell us about those?
Yeah, so this is part of our mission to sort of deal with writers in their whole lives, not just the ones who are sending us queries and submissions, but we believe in helping people be better writers. And so for about 5 years, I've been running this workshop on my own before we founded Galiot Press in this village in the northwest of Greece, which is my family's ancestral village. And now it's come into the Galiot fold. So we will have a workshop there this summer. But even before we get to that, we have a workshop that if you don't want to travel, or you're unable to travel, or if you live abroad and would like to travel to the Cape, you can come to Wellfleet in April. And it's 5 days where everybody gets a chance to workshop a big chunk of pages in a small group. And then there are both of the workshops in Greece and in the Cape are the same way. You workshop a chunk of pages in the morning. The afternoon is devoted to a combination of free time to do your own writing or debriefing, craft talks, office hours, and then shared meals where obviously the conversation around books and writing continues, and possibly, evening readings. And it's a little hothouse program where in the 5 days, I've been running it in Greece for 5 years, and people are always very, very almost pleasantly surprised with how much writing they get done and how much feedback they get and give. And of course, you learn so much just by giving.
And energy you get from that.
And the
also.
energy, yeah. People usually, they tell me they came home from Greece and they were on this sort of writing jag for a long time afterwards.
Yeah, so we're running that the one in Wellfleet on the Cape is April 2nd to the 6th, and all the information's on our website. We're taking applications now. But application can sound sort of daunting, but it's basically send in some sample pages, tell us, what you want out of this, and also why are you interested in doing this, and give us a name of one one contact who knows you in a class or workshop setting. Doesn't even have to be writing necessarily, but just so we know the basics, that how to behave in a group.
Play nice with the other kids.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So anyway, we're taking applications now, and we're just today I started posting a bunch of new classes by guest instructors, online Zoom classes. So our website has a bunch of those too, and we're adding more.
Yeah.
Okay. And we've put the websites in the webinar chat for everybody. If you haven't opened the chat yet, that's where you can find them. If you came in a little late, Carolyn, when we're doing the Q&As, could you possibly enter them again, just in case some people came in after we started, because the chat will start when they came in. So I guess the last question before we get to Q&A I want to ask you guys is, what is one piece of advice you would give to an unpublished writer, someone who has been writing? Maybe like for myself, I now have a bunch of screenplays, but I'm switching to novels, and I might even take some of the screenplays and turn them into novels. So what is your advice to an unpublished writer?
I'm going to pop in because I get this one a lot. It's it's really simple. It's just you have to keep going. You can't be dismayed by an obstacle, which will definitely pop up at some point if it's not the first thing that happens to you. Someone will say no. Just view it as a gateway to yes, which sounds really naive, but it's just you just have to keep working on your book. And if you have to set it aside and write the next one, well, do that. And if you have to rethink whether it's a book at all, maybe it's something else, maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's a TikTok video. I mean, just rethink, decide, is this a channel that this content needs to go in, this story that only I know how to tell? If it's a story that you think anybody else can tell, then it's been told. So only write something that you feel like you are the one person who can get this across to the world, and then figure out a way to get it out there. And if you stick with it, persistence has to be your middle name as a writer. And even writers I know who are very far along in their careers, there's always terrible stuff that happens. Editors leave, publishers go out of business, things don't go as planned. You just have to have a really thick skin and a strong spine. And that all sounds, it all sounds sort of like, a little too simplistic, but you just have to keep writing. If you're not writing, then tell yourself to get to it.
And yeah, that's the truth. I would say that my advice to a writer looking to get published, because plenty of people are writing and just, they don't necessarily want or need to get published. But if you're trying to get your work published, I would say to really have a clear idea of what you feel success looks like, what you consider success to be. For some people that would be, be on the New York Times bestseller list. Others it would be, I want to do a few events where I get to talk about my book in front of lots of people and connect with people, whatever it is, because I think that is really important to know when you start looking into what channels to pursue for publication, and reduces the chance of disappointment or surprise. So yeah, that's what I really think about. What does success look like for you?
I guess I would add to that two things. One, that I think it's a really difficult art, but it's worth pursuing. Not writing, I mean, that's true, but but the art of matching your chosen goal, choosing a goal that matches to the level of work you're willing to put into it. And understanding the relationship between those two, and thinking about really what is going to go into that goal that you have. And first of all, can you even control it? To say, I want to be on the New York Times bestseller list,
Right.
that's a goal you can't control. So
not
good
at
luck
all.
with that. Find something that you can aim at that is within your control, and then also realize, this is the second piece, that you can only guarantee, the only reward you can guarantee for yourself is your enjoyment and satisfaction from the writing itself.
Yeah.
The rest, you can't, even the stuff that you think you can control, because it's about how often you sit down in your chair and work, or how many query letters you send out, you still can't control that, because you can't control the person on the other side. But if you're satisfied and enjoying, even when it's hard, if you're enjoying the challenge of writing, and if that's enough of a reward, then you're already winning.
Yeah. The craft has to be enough. And if you get something else, that's even better. It's icing, It's, you better, I always tell people, if you don't enjoy writing your book, no one's going to enjoy reading it.
Yeah.
Just don't grind it out. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
Well, I do have three more questions that have come into us from our audience. And Tony asks a question. So I have a question for Stona, a question for Galiot, and then a question for all of you.
Sure.
So for Stona, Tony asks, who pays production costs, print paper and binding on the 2000K print run? The author, the press? If so, where does the press get the funding? So here's your time to do your pitch.
Right. We would not have the author pay for anything. It's just unfair. It's like being in a band and having to pay to play. It's just not good. So no, we pay for two things that aren't donated, which are printing and postage, and those are non-negotiable. You can't get free stamps, and our printers like to get paid. And we do print, actual actual copies, short, offset, but short form offset, so that it is per unit cheaper than print on demand, but still it's expensive. So we rely on donors. We are, it's 501c3, just like other nonprofits, and we've got a sort of a group of donors that keeps the thing going at a high level, and then a lot of really small donors that give to us every day. And if people like what we're doing, they just go to our website and give us $10 or $30. So when we give away our books for free, we don't ask that they give money to us. We ask that they give money to something they care about deeply, and that's how we support it. So no, there's no cost to the writer. And I noticed someone else had a query about, like, how do you submit? Well, it's just very simple. You just write an email to concordfreepress@gmail.com. And while I've got a moment here, just to point this out, on the back of each of our books, there is a paragraph. I'm going to read it quickly because it really sums up what we're trying to do. And if you're thinking of submitting, this sort of will tell you what we do. It says, this book is free. By taking a copy, you agree to give away money to a local charity, someone who needs it, or a stranger on the street. Where the money goes and how much you give, that's your call. When you're done, pass the book on to someone else for free, of course, so they can give. It adds up. The Concord Free Press publishes books that inspire generosity. It's an experiment in publishing a community, and you're part of it. So that's our ethos. We call it the Manifesto, and it's on every book, and it's on our bookmarks. It's a gift economy for publishing, and if you want to be part of it in any capacity, either helping out or being published by us, just get in touch.
And you do, I want to let everybody know, you do send the books book rate, because I had gone on there and gotten one. It took several weeks to get it.
Damn. Media mail.
But just to let everybody know, so that, because when I had ordered your book, the Death Watch one, and that came like quickly, like within a week, and the other one was like a week and a half or so later. So
I gave you a special priority stamp, Tish, because I knew it was for you. But yeah, media mail is the death of books. It's really hard. It's gotten more and more expensive. We just do our best. And you do our best. Also, I am sending a box of books to the Athenaeum that people could just pick up. So if you want one from us directly, go to our website, or if you live in the neighborhood, go to the Athenaeum.
That is very generous of you, Stona. Thank you so much. We appreciate that.
Generosity, Tish.
So thank you. So for Galiot, Jay Anderson has asked a question, which is not necessarily glass half full. And so he writes, Jay, whoever Jay is, writes, since the books are printed on demand, what happens to the book if Galiot eventually goes out of business? Because you're just starting. I don't think you're going to go out of business. I think you guys will be wildly successful.
No, but so it's an interesting.
Well, you go ahead.
We're probably going to say exactly the same thing.
Yeah, of course we are.
The interesting thing is the prefacing it with, since the books are printed on demand. When a publisher goes out of business,
no matter what,
it's a problem. And it's especially a problem if there are 5,000 books in a warehouse somewhere, right? So I actually think that the fact that we're a print on demand is sort of less of a problem. Should we, in the very unlikely event that we go out of business, there will not be some inventory sitting around that's in limbo. We can revert the rights back to the author. We can, and then they can decide.
The determination clause in the contract makes that very clear, that if we stop being in business, the author has the rights to their book.
Right, and the author can then continue that relationship with the printer or not, or take it elsewhere. Yeah. So it actually is a little more flexible than if there was a warehouse with physical books sitting, like when small press distribution went under, and then all these small presses had these books sitting around that they couldn't do anything with. Right. Yeah, and we will, and we'll also have ebooks, and but again, with the print on demand, it's just much more nimble. It's much more flexible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I currently have one more question in the Q&A. If anybody else wants to add a question, now is your opportunity. But this is a question for all of you. Can you think of anything that would make you outright reject a manuscript from an author? And with that also, will you all add what it is, because each of you has your specialty of what you prefer to print or what you don't, what you actually are not looking at this time.
Well, I would just say, I mean, if I'm reading the first 10 pages, which is what we request as a sample, and no matter what the style or what the story is, if the writing is bad, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm not interested. And I don't, and you know, there is a range of styles. I don't mean that everything has to be written in a particular some kind of particular style. It could be written in like the style of a punk rocker speech, you know, from some, because Stona was in a band. Using that example. It could be written like as if you were in the Clash. That's fine. But if it's done messily and badly, I'm sorry.
Yeah, if I'm confused,
I'm not interested.
if I have to reread to understand what's going on, if I'm confused,
There are
you know, any
typos.
of those kind of, if I'm like, any kind of negative emotion, not because the substance of the story is depressing or whatever. I mean, like just how it's conveyed.
Right.
I think also, I mean, we're not, so, you know, we're deliberately a little vague about what genres we're looking for, but we know that we're not currently looking for anything that is specifically, well, kids or YA, whatever. YA is like this weird, everybody reads YA now, so we're not looking for anything that is pure like romance, erotica, sci-fi, although if there's sci-fi elements mixed into something
we
else, we're
consider those,
open to that.
Yeah.
And it's mostly, you know, it's all subjective, right? So it's based on either our personal preferences or just the areas that we feel the most comfortable being strong editors for, right? I mean, I love poetry. I'm not a poetry editor.
Yeah. I think for both of us, language is very, very important to us. And so to be more serious about my rather flippant dismissal before, if it's clear in the first pages that whatever the chosen style and the chosen content, the author hasn't paid attention to language, then that doesn't inspire confidence in me, and I will likely not keep reading.
I agree with all of that said. The only advice, the only two pieces to add is, I think if it has an authorial sort of arrogance to it, it instantly turns me off, because the author is like trying to either overpower me with their wit or their intellect.
Yeah.
Then that rubs me the wrong way, because I tend to be a more realist guy. But also, and this comes from having been through a writing program where people tried to sound like they were in a writing program. It's the Elmore Leonard advice that if it sounds like writing, cut it out. So if it starts to sound like you're not getting to the story, or you're just prolonging, you know, the language because you love every word you've written and you haven't really edited it, well, then that loses me right away. It has to be propulsive and compelling, but not necessarily in a genre kind of way. It just has to show a high degree of authorial control, which is something you get by rewriting a lot or having written a lot. And you know when you hit the groove, you know. And I can tell as an editor, if the writer has, you know, hits it every now and then, but not the whole time, well, that's fixable. But if he never hits it, that's really hard.
Yeah.
That's a really great way to authorial control. That's what you want to know, that you're going to be in the hands of someone who really is in charge.
Gets it. Yeah, it's a sniff test. You know, you open a file and you read it, whether it's the first page or the first 10, and you're like, I mean, we all read a lot, so it's like, in some ways, we've got these highly adapted antennae that tell us like, or it sounds like this, or it's that. That sometimes you have to get through your own preconceptions of that and give it a shot, of course. But it really has to come through, and it has to come through pretty quickly. So, as I'm sure you do in your workshops, those first 10, 25 pages are really important, and you got to really get them right.
Yeah.
Good title too. A good title. Damn it.
Titles can be changed.
Somebody mentioned earlier about what to me sounds like author's voice. Like that a person, you know, is it your story? You know, why are you telling this story at this particular time, and why is it important to you? And that should come through in your own personal style and voice.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well put.
So This has been a fantastic discussion. Is there anything that any of you feel like you wanted to say and haven't had the opportunity to get out there? Anything that I missed tonight?
I'll jump in just to say that, although we are not doing things as much for free, we do some little things for free, but not in the way that sort of Stona is exemplifying as the gift economy. We do really believe in transparency and in sharing information. And so for the past over a year now, we've been running a Substack newsletter where we talk about what we're doing, the challenges, what we're learning, what we're discovering, and we've recently now we have a piece, so that's always free, but we've also started being more transparent about the behind the scenes. So once a month now, our post includes, with our author's consent, very specific examples of, for example, Henriette did her editorial letter for one of our authors, and they had a back and forth about some sort of semantic examples, and so we talk about that, and we talk about one of the books came to us with one title, and we changed the title, and we discussed why and what considerations, and because as writers we know that usually once your book is, if you're lucky enough that your book goes to an editor or a publisher, then it's like, I don't know what's going on there, who's doing what, who's looking at it, what's happening. Oh, you feel cut out from it, and we don't want our authors to feel like that. We don't want other writers to feel like that. So all this to say, if you want to, hop onto our Substack and kind of see what we're up to, that's a place beyond our website where we're sort of telling our story.
And you don't need to be, it's not an app that you have to download or anything.
Yeah,
it's just a URL. It's galiotpress.substack.com. If you are on our website, you'll see the place to subscribe. It's just a newsletter that's delivered to you every other week.
Yeah.
I mean, no matter how you publish or who publishes you or who you get published by, publishing is it's an industry based on hope. And, the best you can do is to work closely as a team with writers and editors and have fun with it. And ideally the book finds a home. If it doesn't, then you move on. But it's just, you have to really enjoy the process and the people you work with, because that's all we all have on the earth is the people we work with. It's not like everybody, just is in the resume building business. We're in the community business. If it's a business, and it is.
Yeah. And we are, speaking of community, we want to create community, and we also rely on community. So we have like a system of what we call our street team or our crew, just keeping a Galiot as a type of boat. So it's so our crew, so that we have people in different metropolitan areas who are telling us, oh, hey, this is a cafe where, you could really have your books for sale. This is a local event that would be great, and send some books and I'll be there, or whatever it is. Just
that's how it works.
Engage people. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. That's terrific. Well, Concord Free Press, Galiot Press, Stona, Henriette, and Anjali, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Carolyn, for doing everything that you did behind the scenes to get everything up there. Thank you for all of our participants. And we had a great group tonight. So we really appreciate you being here. And thank you for joining us at the Salem Athenaeum.
Yes.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Good luck, everyone, with your writing.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Yeah, and feel free to submit. All the information's on our website for how to do so.
Keep going, everybody. All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.